Welcome to Slope Reliability, the show where we learn about reliability, observability, and resilience one day at a time. I'm your host, Stephen Townsend. Welcome back to Slope Reliability. I'm Stephen Townsend, and today I am joined by Milan Brown, who is an engineering director for platform security and architecture at Sin7. He's worked in tech for over 20 years and has a particular interest in cloud, DevOps excellence, talent development, and of course, reliability engineering. Milan's also based in Auckland, as I am, in New Zealand. Although we've never met in person, perhaps we need to rectify that and catch up for a coffee or something stronger at some point in the future. How are you today, Milan?
I'm good. Yeah, coffee, something stronger sounds good.
We're going to loosely talk around the idea of technology leadership, which is obviously something that I'm really interested in at the moment. And I spoke with Michelle Casey about it recently. But that's the loose thing. But there's quite a few interesting things we wanted to cover today.
Sure.
I guess the first thing is, just before we go any further, tell us a little bit about your career, how it started out and how you got to where you are today.
I guess my career, it's I'd just gone with the flow. So I've done loads of different jobs throughout my career, and I landed in tech during the Y2K stuff. I was running a bar, and a customer said, "You seem pretty smart. Why didn't you come and do some QA work on Citigroup's mainframe back in 2000?" Which I did, and that's how I got into tech. And I've just changed roles. I've always been interested in, I guess, the infrastructure space, networking, things like that. And my role evolved over the years to building things for development teams. And that's pretty much what I've always been doing. We had when I was working in very early in my career in 2003, 2004, we were building fully automated environments with this weird tool, Sol tool we had called Hudson, which I don't know, some people that are as old as me and as grey as me, and now it's known as Jenkins. So that was our one and only tool to build fully automated things, environments and pipelines and things like that. I really enjoyed that work, and I've stuck to that whole theme my entire career. How do I build things where people can use compute power to run their features? I don't think I've ever written a customer feature in my entire career. And I started jumping into leadership because I noticed let's call it a flaw in other leaders in a way, or I thought I could do it better. Somewhat naive, I would say, in that way. And it's just grown from there. I've had some fairly senior roles here in New Zealand. Last one at Westpac, and I was actually working with Michelle at the time there.
Oh, cool.
We worked together. She was product owner for one of the teams where I was leading the engineering for. Really cool person. Really like working with Michelle. Really interesting ideas and thoughts. There was, very much the manager of manager roles, running, I think, over 100 engineers were total in the tribe. Similar role, but smaller organization at Jardin. And now I've shifted back to, I guess, closer to my roots, which is very much that platform side, enabling development teams, as well as I have the opportunity here, which some people, and even when I joined, the CTO challenged me. He said, "You really think running security and platform in one team is a good idea?" And my only response to that was, "Yeah, tell me where you've worked where both teams just don't fight." Here, the only fighting has to happen in my mind. I'm pretty sure my team members have seen me have conversations with myself.
Breaking down silos. That's a good way to be. So something that's interesting is you didn't study computer science or engineering. You studied hotel management.
That's correct. Yeah. And it's funny because when I first went into tech, what I'd learned, I couldn't really apply. Now, when I look at the stuff that I learned then, I can really apply it and I can really relate to it. So some of the stuff that sticks with me, one of the teachers is really good. So he did sort of general management, people management, HR, all of that sort of side of stuff he talked a lot about theory X and theory Y management. So theory X is this belief that people are stupid and you have to tell them what to do. Theory Y is this belief that if you create the sort of right environment for people to want to work in, they will just do the right thing. You don't need to control what they're doing. You just need to create the sort of environment and set some level of direction, and they will just go and do it. I fully prescribe to theory Y management. I'm sure these days newer management books, and they do, and I don't remember what they call them, call them different things. But this was, I think it comes from the time of sort of Peter Drucker. I'm not sure if he mentions it in his books, but it's not originally from him.
Theory X, Theory Y. For anyone who's interested, there's a book called Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette, I think is how you pronounce his surname. Yeah, it talks about that. The whole book's about that, his journey in the Navy on a nuclear submarine, introducing what you're calling theory Y. He calls it leader, I think. But yeah, I fully think that is the way to be. It's that whole thing is compatible with my value system, I think, as well. But I also think it just, if you can get it to work, is so much more. You can get so much more done and be so much more creative and productive than one person having to think for hundreds of people.
Doesn't. I think in the work that we do, right, from that technical engineering point of view, you can't tell people how to do their job. It's an interesting one. And that book goes into it. It's one of my favorite books around leadership around. I think it's a story, right, rather than sort of like a textbook written thing. One of my favorite things out of that book is intention stuff. So lead with intention here, where he gives the order to his people on how they should address them, which is, I intend to do the following. And it's a really simple thing, but it changes the whole way you speak and have to answer about things. These very small things that you can do from a leadership point of view. Tell me what you're going to do, and then I can ask you questions, versus, I want you to do this. Can you go and do it? That's commanding the person. The first one is, you don't even need to answer if you agree. You can just give them a nod. That's really powerful. I think one of the things when I was working in a large bank, colleague of mine, he said, I need 100 people, over 100 people to approve a change. So he could never get change done. And I said, well, how do you get approvals? Is it in a system? He said, no, it's just email. I said, so you need to receive 100 emails saying, yes, you can do a change. And he said, yeah. And I said, change the email. Just say, I'm going to make this change at this time. Does anyone disagree? And he said, what do you mean? He says, you're implying that they're all going to approve it. They can only challenge you on the timing at this point. And he messaged me the following week. He's like, I finally got my change done. Thank you. And he was asking exactly the same thing. He was just asking it in a different way.
That whole thing of sending an email to a bunch of people to get approval for things, it's almost like there's informal channels of communication and formal channels of communication. And that feels like it's a formal thing being done in a kind of informal way. There's no clear tooling or process necessarily.
It's really interesting. I know exactly where you're going here. It's the what's the point of having everyone approve if you don't have this formal record, right? Because isn't that the point of the approval process? That is that formal compliance type thing. And yeah, so if it's not done in some kind of system of record, how is it useful? Do we use email really as a system of record and rely on humans to put it in the right folder? That doesn't feel right.
Especially if that person leaves the company and it's like an auditor comes, how are you going to find it?
Yeah.
Interesting you said you work with Michelle. That's a very New Zealand thing, isn't it? So we're a country of like 5 million people, and in tech, if you meet someone, you're bound to work with similar people. It's just the way that it works. One of the unique things I think about New Zealand is that it's a small country, and because of that, the companies are smaller, there's less people, and so there are a lot more, I guess, I think the value of a generalist is quite high because you can't afford to be just a cog in a big machine. There's too much to be done on not enough people. So you have to be across and thinking about a variety of things. Yeah. Do you think that also crosses, are there differences or unique things about being a tech leader in New Zealand?
I think so, and it's possibly more a company size thing, this one, than a New Zealand thing necessarily, but it's a tech leader. It's sometimes like, at times I'm sitting there like trawling through logs when we have issues and things like that, doing the actual technical discovery work and things like that. And at times, and another part of the day, I'll be trying to improve on strategy and things like this, or talking to leadership about what we're doing. I think that's potentially a size of an organization thing a little bit. But yeah, New Zealand has got this interesting scale issue in that one, which is, yeah, you have to be that generalist a lot at any level in tech. It is a size. I think when I worked in Zurich, I did some consulting at what is now one large bank, UBS and Credit Suisse. But I did some work at both of them. And the tech team there, so the whole IT team just in Zurich and in one building, or essentially, or in a couple of buildings, was well over 10,000 people, just the tech team. I don't reckon Auckland's got that many people working in tech. Like one of the biggest companies from a tech point of view has to be Datacom in Auckland. And they've got 3,000 people, 3.5. Westpac's when I was there, it was 1,000 or so, I guess. You're at AAG, what's that, a few hundred?
Yeah, in New Zealand, just a few hundred, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the scale is really different in New Zealand. And it's really interesting when I came back here. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. Everyone I've worked with are like the most talented people from just quality of things they produce and how they work all came out of New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa. And I got back here and I ended up in Datacom as my first role, which was weird as a company. And I was shocked at kind of not the quality of the people, but the quality of the organization around them, if that makes sense. So the quality of management around the individuals. So we have these great talented people, but the structure and the environment they're working in is just not useful to those individuals. It's really not helping them thrive. And it was really interesting because it was like, how do you unleash all this great talent that we have in New Zealand, all these great skills? Because I think there is that very much that old Kiwi mindset of just get it done, which points back to those generous type individuals, right? It's a very Kiwi culture thing.
Okay, so that's interesting. So when you came here back and you were looking at the lack of leadership, unlocking the potential of staff. So that, I mean, that's clearly something I've been trying to figure out for myself and how to, as a leader to do that. And for me, I've been focusing on building that culture of trust and curiosity. And two parts of that. One is I think people need to trust each other in the team and trust me, and we rely on each other and break down those barriers. And that's one part of it. The second bit, though, is that building a culture where it's okay to question things and say this isn't working, or call something out. We can't do this anymore. It's not working for us. That's one thing. And the other thing is, and I'm not very good at it yet, is setting a really clear vision. Because if I want the team to be able to go and not micromanage them, but just go and execute and deliver awesome things, I need to provide a clear vision, or we need to come up with a vision together, right? That we can all rally around. And I'm still working at that. But are there other things how would you as a leader unlock the potential of the people that work in your teams?
I think the first one is you kind of nailed it, right? Which is that trust thing. So it's that establishing trust with your people, because if you don't have that, you can't have the conversations you need to have around what are people actually afraid of. Because there's another good book around this sort of thing that I love and hate. I love the concept of the book. I do not like reading just the way it's written. It's from the company that publishes the Accelerate book and DevOps Handbook. It's called Agile Conversations. And they have this very structured approach to actual conversations, but they talk about 5 types of conversations in a specific order. So it's the trust one. So you have work through a trust conversation to establish trust. And then you talk about people's fears. And then you can talk about why you're doing it. And the reason you do it in that order is the why conversation. People won't listen to you if they don't trust you and they're still afraid. Right? And that why is very much your vision. Why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? Then the next one is that commitment, and then accountability. The last conversation is about accountability. So people eventually commit and then fully become accountable for the things that they want to achieve, because you brought them through conversations on that journey. That's my approach, which is very much, I won't say specifically that, but it's the conversational approach. I haven't mastered any other form of comms in a way, right? It's my voice and how and talking. And I guess the other one would be kind of, I write pages and documentation for people that aren't too long or too hard to read. So when we talk about vision, one thing I've learned is I've tried the group vision thing, like let's all work on this together and see what comes out. And it's really hard, and I've never found it gets very far, versus the approach that I've taken the last few, which is, here's a rough draft. What do you guys think? Add to it, please.
This is actually what I was about to ask you, because I struggled with it. I went straight to well, first of all, when I started, I didn't have a team, so I had a clear vision and I wrote it down. And then as the team grew, we had these team canvas workshops to talk about our purpose and everything. And that was like really interesting, but it was so hard to pull together a cohesive purpose at the end of it. Yep. So I think what you just said sounds much more sensible.
Like you've been doing their role, the people that are in your teams, probably for a long time. So from that point of view, you're very senior. From a leadership point of view, you move sideways in a way, up if you want to call it, whatever. But from those leadership skills, you end up as more of a junior, right? If you think about it, it's not a promotion. What's your name? Honeycomb's founder, Charity Majors. I don't know if you know her. She wrote a great article around this, around choosing to be a manager or not type thing. And I think it's called the manager and it can contribute a pendulum or something like that. And it talks a lot about things like this. I love the article. I think it's really good. It's reasonably old now, but it's still completely relevant to help someone make that decision. And I guess back to that vision piece, like you've done that part, so you kind of know what you want to do. So you have to write certain things without being prescriptive about how to do it. It's actually, we want to be here. We want to be able to measure these sorts of things. One of some of the interesting stuff that I put into that's in 7, the things that I want to get to for my team and for the organization is our software and infrastructure is 100% reproducible, which kind of sets that goal of how do you write everything as IAC, or everything in pipelines and all of that. But it's just a measure to get to. The team determine how they get there. And they can ask you questions along the way, which is your measure of trust in the team. Is if people are asking you for advice, you're probably on the right path. Saying, oh, I'm thinking about doing the networking this way, for example. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Keep going.
I spoke a little bit about this with Michelle as well, but in a lot of cases, people who become tech managers in the official sense, they have direct reports and that sort of accountability, often get promoted because they're strong engineers. And as I'm sure I think we chatted about a few weeks ago, there's completely different skill sets, right? And there's no one who starts their career with these amazing, well, apart from you studying hotel management first, not many people who start off their career and just have all the skills. It's something you have to get somewhere. But it's also, compared to a lot of engineering disciplines, if you're a developer or a tester or a systems analyst or engineer, you're working with other people doing the same thing in a team often, most of the time. But as a manager, I found it a little bit more isolating and harder to have people around me who are doing the same thing I can learn from. I have to go out of my way to do that and ask for help. And can I shadow you here? Can I talk this through with you? I guess, I don't know. Is it just my unique situation, or does every manager have to go on this sort of path of figuring out how to do this?
There is a lot of figuring out how to do it, because a lot of it is the human side of things, right? And you can't shadow someone in a difficult conversation they're having with a staff member. It's not right. So that's one thing that'd be interesting. But I'm trying to observe how other leaders do it. Sometimes it can be really useful. Ask to, if they're doing workshops and things like that, just ask to participate and just say, how can I assist you in facilitating? But then you get that opportunity, if you're facilitating a thing, you don't have to focus on the content. That's why I kind of like facilitating. Saying you don't have to care what they're talking about. I spend a lot of time in situations like that, just observing how people behave and how the leader behaves in particular. So if you get opportunities like that, that's something I found really useful. I volunteered to do retros for other teams.
Cool.
There's this tool called RetroMat that I like using to help set up retros, and that's really useful. And I just focus on the activities, what people end up saying in there. It's actually, I can walk away and forget all about that because it's not relevant to me, the actual content, the process and things like that are, and what I learn from that. Other thing is I read a lot. I really enjoy reading articles, books. I've learned a lot from that. You mentioned one of my favorites, Turn the Ship Around. Drive is probably another one, trying to understand how humans think a little bit. Yeah, it talks about 3 things, right? Purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Your vision should be giving your team kind of purpose. Autonomy is how you set that environment up so they can make the right decisions for themselves, and they feel like they have enough control over the outcomes. It's a fine balance, that one. And the last one is mastery, so finding the opportunities for them to improve themselves. Everyone wants to get better at what they do. Well, 99% of people want to get better at what they do.
I had another question from your perspective. So my deep background is performance engineering. That's the one thing I know a lot about, and I still feel extremely confident in that area. And then I started dabbling in reliability engineering in the broader sense, and I feel pretty confident that I understand the gist of what's going on. But I manage a team who does all kinds of other things that I'm not an expert in, particularly testing. I know a bit about testing, but release and environment management is something that's very unnatural to me. It's not necessarily the thing that my brain can understand very well, but I'm managing people to work in this space. You mentioned facilitation and that style of sort of leadership as one way to manage that. How important do you think it is for me to become an expert in those areas, or how much do I need to know about those things to lead people who do that work?
Potentially, I've led teams of software engineers in them, and I've never written software in my life. But I understand the process. I understand what they have to go through. I worked alongside enough software engineers to understand that kind of creative process and what kind of things they need to thrive in. And I guess it's like, how do you create a thing where they can be successful is what you need to understand. So you need to be confident enough in understanding that the domain to be able to answer questions to your bosses about their work. But you don't need to go into the nitty-gritty detail. One of the things that I've also found useful, like part of our job as leaders, is to make sure that our staff grow and things like that. And a big piece of that is making sure they become known to higher ups in the organization. I love name dropping. That's one thing I always do. Like when I'm talking about the CTO at Sen7, I'm always talking about, oh, Tony's been doing this or Jason's been doing this. It's not me being doing it. I don't do that work. I write emails and Slack messages and stuff like that most of my time. The occasional compliments page, which that's part and parcel of the job. I do that so that these guys can have time to focus on solving problems and making our platform better and more resilient. The other one that I found that's really useful in that space is in big meetings, where you're talking about whatever, you kind of mention if it's relevant. Anyone, it doesn't have to be someone in your team, but it's a massively empowering thing for younger people or more junior people or individual contributors, is just to say, hey, we were talking about that the other day. You just call them out in the meeting and say, I can't quite remember what the details of it. Can you share? You're not putting them on the spot in any way, shape, or form. You're actually helping, them establish credibility, which is really useful.
I like that. I hadn't heard that before, and I do try and showcase my team as much as possible, the individuals in the team. But it's amazing how just the title of a person can change how others behave around them. So just because I have even just myself, I have the title manager now, there are certain people who maybe might have been more forthcoming with information or easier with talking more freely around me, just don't anymore, even though I'm like a first level manager with a small team. And then when my boss comes along, everyone's so nervous.
I reckon this one stems from early on in most humans' lives, right? This is classroom issues. It's like the teacher's up the front and you must do as you're told. I fundamentally believe there's a lot of that going on in many people's minds. I was a little bit of a rebel in class. I got suspended a few times and detention, I don't know how often, and things like that, just because I asked questions and I challenged them. I probably didn't have the best approach back then. I probably offended them a fair bit. But I think there's a lot of that. It's that fear of this person has the power because they're in management of taking this thing that is important to me away from me, which is the job, which is really weird when you think about it, because now that you're a manager, you know how that is not an easy thing to do. Actually, removing someone from an organization, especially here in New Zealand, is not an easy process. I would say it's 100% worse having had to manage people on purpose and stuff like that a few times now. It's worse because I haven't been on the other side, but my view is it's such a gut-wrenching, horrible thing to do to a person. I actually, having worked in Switzerland for 20 years, I way prefer their mechanism, which is you have 3 months notice, here's your notice, thank you, this isn't working, don't really need a reason. Most of the time they're genuine and honest enough to say you don't fit in with the team, which is going to be the most common reason you want to remove someone from an organization. Culturally, you don't quite fit, you don't vibe with us. You're making it difficult. It's not about your work, you need to go and find a slightly different organization to work in. That, I think, in Switzerland, that's what I've noticed makes it quite different, is one thing. The other one is, I'd like to share, is something one of the exec team at Westpac, she shared an interesting tidbit. I was like, it's interesting how people won't tell me certain things. I was saying the same thing to her, and she said, yeah, our titles cast very long shadows. Yeah, that's a fair point. And she said, the higher your title or the higher you are in the organization, that shadow just gets longer and longer.
You've just given me an idea for the artwork for this episode. Just little drawings of us with massive shadows going into the distance.
Yeah, it's true. And people don't want to be in that shadow, and they're afraid of shadows. What's in the dark?
Yeah.
I talk a lot about that sort of stuff with my team. like what a PIP is, what it actually means, and stuff like that. So if it becomes the case, it's like they understand what it's about. It helps, I think. I think a lot of people in New Zealand, I was at a leadership meetup late last year, and the CEO of Raygun was talking about this, and yeah, it was really interesting. He says, how many of you have had someone on a PIP in the last year? And he said, everyone kind of, well, the people that had raised their hands. To everyone else, he says, you're probably not doing the job properly. And I found that interesting. I'm like, fair. Says, there's no way you can all have high-performing teams. Not every single person in your team can be a high performer.
Yeah.
And he said one of the issues is that we don't talk. When people come into the workforce, no one says, this is what a PIP means. This is what you have to do. You don't want to be doing these things. People can go through their 20 years of their career and it suddenly slaps them in their face.
Yeah. I have hardly ever in my career had critical feedback. It's always been just praise or positive stuff. And that's not very helpful for me to grow and adapt as a person and as a worker. The other thing is that one of those other books, which I don't love it, but there's some good stuff in there, is Radical Candor. I'll put a link to it in the description. I kind of agree with the idea that if there's a person who they're just in a role, just existing, and they're probably in the wrong role. If we spend so much time at work, if we just show up and click a few keys and log off and forget about it, like, I can see there's times in a person's life when that's totally valid to do, maybe, but yeah, it just seems like a waste of humanity in a way. That's probably a better thing that person could be doing.
Completely. The Drive book touches on that as well, around a person's got to find their passion. They must be passionate about something. What's that? Why are they doing it? There must be an underlying reason. I had an engineer like that, and product owner came to me and said, this guy's not very good. Comes in at 10, goes at 2 or 3, and just sits there and he's bored. All right, let me try and figure out why. There was this default assumption that I was going to, I think I was 2 weeks into the job, and default assumption I was going to go and performance manage him. I didn't do that. I tried it. I just sat down with him a couple of times and said, hey, this is what's been told to me. What are your thoughts? And when I got out in basically probably 2 one-hour conversations, was he was frustrated that his peers that had joined the company with had both been promoted to senior and he hadn't. So I just said, cool, okay, you want to be a senior? Let's talk about that. And he just said, I said, here are my expectations on seniors. Here are the things that I initially see that you're not doing. If you want to be promoted, do those things. Next day, he was there at 8 in the morning, super motivated, till 6, doing all this work. And the product owner came to me and said, what'd you do? Did you threaten to fire him? No, I figured out why he was unmotivated. He wants to be promoted, so he's got a bunch of work to get to that, and then we can work on a promotion. Oh. He was sitting there going through the motions because he was bored of where he was at. So again, another part of our job is to figure out why people were like that. I genuinely believe there are a few people in this world who are just sitting there coasting for no apparent reason, or they've genuinely lost a wider lust for life, right? They've completely lost that in general. I don't think that's something we can solve. That's the, hey, HR, I've got this guy who's just done with life in a way. I'm not sure how to help. Can you help me?
I was thinking there could be times in a person's life when they cruise a little bit. My dad passed away last year, and I was not firing all cylinders, but that's a temporary thing. But if you're going on for years and years, just it's different.
That situation, family issues, that to me, it's always like what comes first. Any of that from a leadership point of view, and you should be allowing people to do that when they're great people. A good friend of mine, she worked with me at Westpac, and I know she's struggled a lot with family and stuff like that, and Westpac as an organization was great at helping her so she could find time and do all of that and work through those things, and there was never a question of that. And I find that's what all organizations should be doing as much as possible, right? What works for the organization. Some smaller organizations, they don't have the money and the funds to just keep that going forever. But as leaders, we need to make sure that our people tell us those things, right? But they have to share us. Like, I read the articles, all the stuff on LinkedIn that says, you don't need to tell your boss why you're taking time off and things like that. I'm like, it's actually useful. Having context to why this person might be sick all the time is useful, rather than saying, they're just always sick. What's going on? What's going on in your life? And it's like, I'm doing this. I'm doing X, Y, Z. I'm buying a house. Hey, I've done that. It's a stressful time. I'll give you some time. I'll make sure that as a team, we've got things covered. So yeah, it's that balance of getting work done and still being human.
We're coming up at time, but this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much, Milan, for this. I think maybe to finish it off, I'll put you on the spot and ask you for any aspiring or new leaders like me, tech leaders out the industry, what would be your short words of wisdom for those people?
It's leadership management. It's not an easy job. It's really confusing in a way. You have to do many different things at a time. My best advice to any leader and what I live by is I do what I say and I show up. That's where I start.
Good advice.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think it's the first podcast I've ever done. So thanks very much, Steve.
Awesome. Thanks again, Milan, for coming on the show. And to everyone else out there, I hope you have a wonderful week and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.